I'm standing in the empty office at 9:47 p.m., and my hands won't stop shaking. Nancy Campbell just asked me a question that's been hanging in the air for 8 months, and I can't run away this time. Are you still upset with me, Paul? Her voice is quiet, almost careful, like she's afraid of what I might say. I'm Paul Yarbrough, and right now I'm trapped between a woman who deserves answers and a truth that's going to hurt both of us. Let me tell you how I got here. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you are tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. 8 months ago, Nancy Campbell became the CEO of Apex Digital Solutions, the tech consulting firm where I've worked for 6 years. The day she walked through those glass doors in the lobby, I was standing by the water cooler on the 5th floor. Someone said, "That's our new CEO," and I looked down at the atrium below. When I saw her face, my water bottle slipped right out of my hand. It hit the floor, water spreading across the tile, and my coworker Derek asked if I was okay. I wasn't okay. I haven't been okay since Nancy Campbell isn't just my CEO. She's the sister of the man who used my sister Paulina as a human shield 4 years ago during a police crossfire, the man whose cowardice got her killed. For 8 months, I avoided Nancy Campbell like my life depended on it. I took the stairs when I knew she'd be in the elevator. I skipped meetings where she might show up. I ate lunch at my desk instead of the cafeteria. When she walked past my office, I pretended to be on the phone or buried in my computer screen. It was exhausting, but it was easier than looking at her face and seeing her brother's eyes. Tara, my daughter, noticed something was wrong. She's only 7, but she's smart. Too smart sometimes. "Daddy, why do you come home so tired?" she asked me one night while I was tucking her into bed. I told her work was just busy, but she looked at me with those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of Paulina, and I knew she didn't believe me. The truth was, every day at Apex Digital Solutions was torture. Nancy was everywhere. Her voice echoed through the hallways during conference calls. Her name appeared on every company email. Her picture hung in the lobby next to the other executives. And every single time I saw or heard anything related to her, my mind went back to that night 4 years ago. The night the police found her brother at a drug smuggling operation. The night he grabbed Paulina, who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, walking home from her shift at the hospital. The night he held her in front of him like a shield while he tried to run from the officers. The night the bullets flew, my sister died on the cold pavement because a coward couldn't face the consequences of his own choices. I hated him. I still hate him. And for 8 months, I let that hate spill over onto Nancy Campbell, even though I knew deep down that she hadn't pulled any trigger. She hadn't been there that night. She hadn't made her brother's choices. But she carried his last name, and in my grief and anger, that was enough. Then tonight happened. Tonight, I tried to leave early. Tara had a school play, and I promised her I'd be there. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the elevator, thinking I'd finally made it through another day without running into Nancy. But when the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, there she was, standing in the hallway like she'd been waiting for me. "Paul," she said, and I froze. My finger hovered over the elevator button, ready to press again and escape, but something in her voice stopped me. She sounded tired. Not the CEO tired, but human tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. "I need to catch my daughter's play," I said, not meeting her eyes. "Can this wait until tomorrow?" "No," she said softly. "It can't. We've been waiting 8 months already." That's when she asked the question, "Are you still upset with me, Paul?" And I knew she wasn't talking about a missed deadline or a project report. She was talking about everything I'd been running from since the day she walked through those doors. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say I didn't know what she was talking about, press the elevator button, and disappear into the night. But standing there, looking at her face for the first time in months, really looking at it, I saw something I hadn't expected. Pain. The same kind of pain I've been carrying around like a weight on my chest. Yes, I finally said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. I'm upset with you. I'm upset every single day because every time I see you, I see your brother. I see Paulina on that street. I see the life my daughter could have had if your family hadn't destroyed everything. The words came out like a flood. I couldn't stop. 8 months of avoidance. 8 months of holding everything inside. And suddenly it was all pouring out in an empty hallway while my daughter waited for me at her school play. Nancy didn't flinch. She didn't get defensive or angry. She just stood there and took every word like she'd been expecting them. Like she'd been waiting for this moment as long as I had. When I finally stopped talking, she nodded slowly and said something that changed everything. I know, and I need to tell you why I'm really here. Nancy didn't move from where she stood in the hallway. The office was completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run to Tara's school play and pretend this conversation never happened. But something kept my feet planted on that floor. I didn't take this job by accident, Paul, Nancy said quietly. I knew you worked here. I knew everything about you before I ever walked through those doors 8 months ago. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? She took a breath, and I could see her hands were shaking just like mine. After that night 4 years ago, after what my brother did, I couldn't just move on with my life. Everyone told me to. My parents, my friends, my therapist, they all said I wasn't responsible for his choices. But how could I not feel responsible? He's my brother. I grew up with him. I watched him make bad decision after bad decision, and I didn't stop him. You couldn't have stopped him, I said, but the words fell hollow coming out of my mouth. Maybe not, she said, but I could do something else. I could find the family he destroyed and make sure they were okay. So I found you, Paul. I found out you were a single father raising a 7-year-old daughter alone. I found out you were working here at Apex Digital Solutions, barely making enough to cover rent, childcare, and everything else. And I knew I had to help. I stared at her. Help? You call this help? You think becoming my boss was some kind of favor? I applied for the CEO position specifically to be here, she continued, ignoring my anger. I made sure your salary was increased. I made sure Tara's school fees were covered through the company's education program. I made sure your salary was increased. I made sure Tara's school fees were covered through the company's education program. I made sure you got every opportunity for promotion and advancement, not because I felt sorry for you, Paul, but because I respected you. Respected me? I repeated, my voice rising. You've been watching me like some kind of project? Like, I'm a charity case you need to fix to make yourself feel better about what your brother did. No, she said firmly, and for the first time, her voice had some strength in it. That's not what this is. Yes, I came here because of guilt. Yes, I came here because I needed to know that the man whose sister died because of my brother's cowardice was going to be okay. But that's not why I stayed. I didn't know what to say to that. The elevator dinged behind me, doors opening to an empty car, but neither of us moved. Nancy took a step closer. For 8 months, I've watched you be an incredible father. I've seen you leave work early for Tara's doctor appointments and school events. I've seen you stay late to finish projects, so you wouldn't have to bring work home and take time away from her. I've watched you lead your team with patience and kindness, even when you were clearly exhausted. I've seen the kind of man you are, Paul, and somewhere along the way, watching you became less about guilt and more about something else entirely. My heart was pounding in my chest. What are you saying? She looked directly into my eyes, and I could see tears forming in hers. I'm saying I fell in love with you, not because you're connected to my brother's crime, not because I feel guilty, but because watching you survive and thrive and love your daughter despite everything you've been through made me realize what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. You can't be serious. I am, she said. I know it's wrong. I know you have every right to hate me. I know that loving you is probably the most selfish thing I could do because it puts you in an impossible position. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep watching you avoid me and knowing that you see a monster every time you look at my face. I don't see a monster, I said quietly, surprising myself with the truth in those words. I see his sister, and that's been enough to make me run. But I'm not him, Nancy said, her voice breaking. I'm not my brother, Paul. I didn't make his choices. I didn't use an innocent woman as a shield. I didn't run from the police. I didn't destroy your family. He did. And I've spent 4 years trying to atone for something I didn't do because I didn't know what else to do with this guilt. She wiped at her eyes, and I realized I'd never seen her cry before. In 8 months of working under her leadership, I'd only ever seen her be strong and confident and completely in control. I love you, she said again. And I love Tara, even though I've never met her properly. I've seen her pictures on your desk. I've heard you talk about her on phone calls. And I want you both to be happy, even if that happiness does include me. The elevator doors closed behind me, and the silence stretched between us. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Tara's teacher, wondering where I was. But I couldn't move. Everything I thought I knew about Nancy Campbell had just shattered. Everything I believed about her for 8 months was wrong. I don't know what to say. I finally admitted. Then don't say anything, Nancy said. Just think about it. And if you decide you can't forgive me for being his sister, I'll understand. But I needed you to know the truth. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My dad said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. But I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show him that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. I didn't go to Tara's school play that night. I called her teacher and made up some excuse about a work emergency, and the guilt of that lie sat heavily in my stomach. But I couldn't leave that hallway. Not yet. Not after everything Nancy had just said. We stood there in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. Nancy had stopped crying, but her eyes were still red. She looked vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before, and it made something shift inside my chest. Something I'd been trying to ignore for months. I need to ask you something, I said finally, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She nodded. Anything. Your brother. Where's he now? Nancy's face went pale. He's in prison. He was sentenced to 20 years for what he did that night. Drug smuggling, resisting arrest, and... She paused, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Manslaughter for Paulina's death. The sound of my sister's name coming from Nancy's mouth should have made me angry, but instead, it just made me tired. So incredibly tired of carrying this weight around. Have you seen him? I asked, since he went to prison. She shook her head. No, I couldn't. My parents visit him sometimes, but I can't bring myself to sit across from him and act like everything is okay, because it's not okay. It will never be okay. I understood that feeling more than she knew. For 4 years, I've been telling myself the same thing, that nothing would ever be okay again, that the hole Paulina left in our lives was permanent and unfilled, that Tara would grow up without her aunt, and I would grow up without my sister, and that was just how things were now. But standing there looking at Nancy, I realized something I'd been too angry to see before. She'd lost someone, too. Maybe not to death, but she'd lost her brother the night he chose to use my sister as a shield. The person she grew up with, the person she thought she knew, had turned into someone she couldn't recognize. And she'd been living with that loss just like I'd been living with mine. I think we need to see him, I said, the words coming out before I fully thought them through. Nancy's eyes went wide. What? Your brother. I think we need to go see him. Together. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Paul, I don't think that's a good idea. What would that accomplish? It would just hurt you more. Maybe, I admitted, Or maybe it's the only way either of us can actually move forward. Because right now we're both stuck. You're stuck carrying guilt for something you didn't do, and I'm stuck hating someone I've never even met. I've built him up in my mind as this monster, but I don't actually know anything about him except what happened that one night. Nancy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "He writes to me sometimes. Letters. My parents forward them because they think I should read them, but I always throw them away without opening them. But in the last one, my mother told me he's been asking about the family he hurt, about you and Tara. She said he wants to apologize." "Then let him," I said. "Let him apologize to my face. Let me see if he actually means it or if he's just saying what he thinks will make him feel better. And if he doesn't mean it?" Nancy asked if he's still the same selfish person he was 4 years ago. I thought about that. Then at least I'll know, and I can stop wondering. I can stop giving him space in my head that he doesn't deserve. Nancy pulled out her phone and stared at it for a moment before looking back up at me. "If we do this, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't do this for me. Don't go see him because you think it will make me feel better, or because you feel obligated after what I just told you. Only do this if it's something you actually need for yourself." I thought about her words carefully. Did I need this? Did I need to look into the eyes of the man who'd taken my sister from me? A week ago, I would have said no. A week ago, I would have said that seeing him would only make things worse. But now, after everything Nancy had just revealed, I realized I did need it. Not for her, but for me. For Tara. For the possibility of a future that wasn't defined by one terrible night 4 years ago. "I need it," I said. "I need to see him. I need to hear what he has to say. And then I need to decide if I can forgive him. Not for his sake, but for mine." Nancy nodded slowly. Then she did something that surprised me. She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were cold, and I could feel them trembling slightly, but she held on tight. "Okay," she said. "I'll arrange it. The prison allows family visits on Saturdays. We can go this weekend if you want." This weekend, I repeated, 3 days away. 3 days to prepare myself for a conversation I've been avoiding for 4 years. 3 days to figure out what I was going to say to the man who destroyed my life. Nancy squeezed my hand once before letting go. "Thank you, Paul, for giving us both a chance at closure." I nodded but didn't say anything, because I wasn't sure yet if closure was possible. But I knew I had to try. Saturday morning came faster than I expected. I barely slept the night before, and when Tara asked me where I was going so early, I told her I had an important meeting. She looked at me with those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of Paulina and said, "Is everything okay, Daddy?" I kissed her forehead and promised her everything would be fine, even though I wasn't sure if that was true. Nancy picked me up at 9 o'clock. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, not the business clothes I was used to seeing her in. She looked younger somehow, more human. We didn't talk much during the hour-long drive to the state penitentiary. The radio played softly in the background, and I watched the city fade away into empty fields and industrial buildings. When we finally arrived, the prison looked exactly like I'd imagined it would. Gray concrete walls, barbed wire fences, guard towers at every corner. Nancy parked the car and turned off the engine, but neither of us moved. "We don't have to do this," she said quietly. "We can turn around right now and forget this ever happened." I shook my head. "No, I need to do this. We both do." The check-in process took almost 30 minutes. They searched our bags, made us walk through metal detectors, and gave us visitor badges. A guard escorted us through several locked doors until we reached the visiting room. It was a large space with rows of tables and chairs, everything bolted to the floor. On one side of each table was a glass partition with phones on either side. We sat down at one of the tables and waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. Nancy reached over and squeezed my hand, and I was grateful for the gesture. Then a door on the other side of the glass opened, and he walked in. David Campbell looked nothing like I expected. I'd built him up in my mind as this monster, this terrible person who couldn't possibly feel remorse for what he'd done. But the man who sat down across from us looked broken. His prison uniform hung loose on his thin frame. His face was gaunt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in years. When he saw Nancy, his eyes filled with tears. He picked up the phone on his side of the glass, and Nancy picked up ours, holding it between us so we could both hear. "Nancy," he said, his voice cracking. "You came. I can't believe you actually came." "I'm here," she said simply. "And I brought someone with me. This is Paul Yarbrough." David's eyes moved to me, and I saw something in them I wasn't prepared for. Genuine pain. Deep, overwhelming guilt. He started crying openly, and for a moment, he couldn't even speak. "Mr. Yarbrough," he finally managed, "I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for what I did to your sister. There isn't a day that goes by, Fate, I don't think about her, where I don't wish I could go back and make different choices." I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to tell him that his apology meant nothing, that saying sorry couldn't bring Paulina back. But looking at him, seeing how destroyed he was, I realized something important. He was already in prison. He was already paying for what he did. And my anger wasn't hurting him anymore. It was only hurting me. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Why did you grab her? Why didn't you just face what you'd done?" David wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "Because I was a coward. Because I was high and scared and stupid. I saw the police coming, and I panicked. Your sister was just walking past, and I grabbed her without thinking. I thought if I had a hostage, they wouldn't shoot. I thought I could get away. But I was wrong about everything. And she died because of my selfishness." He broke down completely then, sobbing so hard his whole body shook. Nancy was crying too, and I realized I had tears running down my own face. "I have a daughter," I said quietly. "Her name is Tara. She's 7 years old. She never got to really know her aunt because of what you did. Do you understand what you took from us?" "Yes," David said. "God, yes, I understand. And I know sorry is enough. I know nothing I say can ever make this right. But I need you to know that I think about Tara. I think about you. I pray every night that somehow you're both okay, even though I know I'm the reason you suffered." We sat there in silence for a long moment. Then I said something I never thought I would say. Something I didn't even know I was capable of saying until the words came out of my mouth. "I forgive you." David looked at me like I'd just performed a miracle. Nancy gasped beside me. But I meant it. I meant every word. "I forgive you," I repeated. "Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. It will never be okay. But I forgive you because I'm tired of carrying this hate around. I'm tired of letting that one night define the rest of my life. I have a daughter who needs me to be whole, and I can't be whole if I'm stuck in the past." David pressed his hand against the glass, and after a moment, I pressed mine against it from the other side. We stayed like that for several seconds before the guard announced visiting time was over. As Nancy and I walked back to the car, I felt lighter than I had in 4 years. The weight I'd been carrying was finally starting to lift. This story teaches us that holding on to anger and resentment only imprisons ourselves, not those who hurt us. True freedom comes when we recognize that people are not defined solely by their family members' actions or mistakes, and that carrying hatred prevents us from seeing the good that might be right in front of us. Forgiveness is not about excusing terrible actions or forgetting the pain they caused. It's about releasing the burden of bitterness so we can heal and move forward with our lives. Sometimes the people we think we should hate are carrying their own unbearable guilt and pain, and when we choose compassion over anger, we give both ourselves and them the chance to find peace. Most importantly, when we let go of the past grip on our hearts, we create space for new love, new possibilities, and a future where our children can see us living fully instead of merely surviving. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. If you're listening right now, Help me prove something wrong. My dad said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show him that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. And here's what I need to know. Do you want part 2?